There's a significant safety factor involved using high-powered pumps. You want to make sure to never deadhead the pump. And what that means is you don't want to have the pump turned on trying to push liquid down a pipe or a hose and have it shut off by a valve or a kink in the hose or anything like that. That pump has to be able to flow freely because they are capable of such high pressure that they will cause extensive damage and possible bodily injury if they're deadheaded. So be very clear that before you turn on a pump, that liquid has some place to go. It can't be deadheaded by a closed valve or a hose that's been kinked shut. Just be very aware of that. So in order to be able to flush the tank out with the water jet, we need to open the tank up. So there's 4 ports up here. We're only going to open 2. The one at the very end and a second one in the center for the light. So these types of clamps are called tri-clamps. It's basically just a collar, and in this case it just has a blind cap on it because these are just used occasionally as access ports. So we're going to take these 2 off. This light is a pretty good fit for what we want to do. It fits over the center port. That'll illuminate the interior of the tank. And then this is the port that we'll insert the spray probe into. And you'll see that in a few minutes. At the end of every antifreeze run, we need to empty out the reactor tank to remove the bottoms that were separated from the glycol in the recycling process. So the first step is to reconfigure the valving for this pump so that we pump out this tank instead of recirculating this tank. So to do that, we want to double check all these valves. This large black one will almost always be open, but be sure it's open. This yellow button on the end of this shaft is an indicator of whether the valve is open or closed. If the yellow button is all the way up against the handle, it's closed. If it's at the opposite end, it's open. So it's open right now. This valve will almost always be closed, but be sure, just turn it righty-tighty, closes the valve so there's no leakage. So the flow from the tank will continue through here, through the blue and white pump, and exit. And here you want to change from our normal recycling valve configuration to pumping out the tank through this green hose to a separate receiving tank. So the steps for that would be to close this valve, rotate the handle to where you can see the yellow button is all the way at the bottom. You'll feel it. It's a rotating valve. When it reaches the bottom and it's closed, it'll tighten up and the yellow button will be at the bottom. You also want to be sure that this valve is closed. It is. The yellow button is all the way at the end. It's the same style of valve. It's just a rotating handle, righty-tighty, closes it. Okay, now this valve would normally be closed and we want to open it. So it's lefty-loosey. Turn it until, well, this one doesn't have a yellow button on it, but it has a silver button on it. So it's all the way at the top. So that valve is open. The next step, this is a ball valve. They're simple and easy to understand. When the handle is 90 degrees to the pipe that it's connected to, it's closed. When the handle is rotated and it's in line with the pipe, then you have flow. This valve is now open. So closed, open. So once you have your valve configuration set the way you want it, you're going to want to be able to transfer this hot liquid to a container that's suitable for that. Right now, we're going to be using this tote, which is just fine. In the future, it may go to a cone bottom for future separations. So you want to make sure you've got a substantial hose. It's in good condition. One that'll tolerate at least 140 degrees temperature. In this case, we're running over here to this tote. Now beware of the fact that the first portion of what's coming out of the reactor could be relatively hot and it might burn you. So you want to make sure your hose is in the receiving container. You want to make sure that it's clamped tight. Give it a little tug. Make sure it's not going to come flying out of there when there's pressure. A second clamp is not a bad idea. You know, it's better to be safe than be sorry. 2 clamps is a better setup. So that would be your typical discharge hose configuration. Also be sure that there's no way that this hose can get kinked, tight, shut off, you know, like a garden hose when you want to turn it off, because that'll create back pressure for that pump, and that pump will just blow this hose apart. So be sure your hose is in a layout that can't be compromised, driven over by a forklift, or kinked in some way. Okay, so the next step is to energize this pump so that it has power and we can use it. That takes place over here in this control cabinet. The main power switch for the control cabinet is this big black one. You rotate it to on. The next step, that pump can pump at various speeds. In this application, we want it to go relatively slowly, so we would go to this VFD. The name on it's Fuji Electric. There's a light up here indicating the speed of the pump. For this application, we want it to be at 10, so it's 10.00. The up arrow will change when you go faster. The down arrow will make it go slower. We want to be right about 10. The green button turns it on, the red button turns it off. So I'm going to turn it on. So right now the pump would be transferring the contents of the tank into our storage tank, where we're going to capture these bottoms for further recycling. Okay, this is a spray jet, the water spray jet we're going to use to flush the solids that are in the bottom of the tank from this end of the tank to the opposite end of the tank where the pump is, and the pump will transfer them out of the tank. So this is just a metal tube with a spray jet on the end. It's directional. It comes out as a solid, strong stream, just so that the operator knows which direction the stream is going. There's a red arrow on the top of this that shows the direction of the stream. This is the on-off valve for controlling the water flow. Okay, we have a little ladder set up back here. Okay, I'm inserting the spray jet in the hole furthest from the pump end. We have a light here to make viewing the flushing process easier. You want to be sure to use a light that cannot fall in the hole. A small flashlight is dangerous. It will ruin your life if it falls inside the tank, because you'll spend the next month digging it out. So you want a nice size light that can be positioned over one of the holes to make viewing the inside of the tank easier. So we're set up to go here. I just turn on this and I start the washing process. And the light makes it easy to see where you are. And it's just a water jet, kind of like a strong car wash, washing the water and the mud down to the opposite end. It's really no different than washing your car, you know. You're just sweeping the left and right across the bottom of the tank with the water stream, washing the bottoms towards the pump end. It's a very flowable material. It's not difficult to move with water at all. So it's really just a question of getting enough water flowing to get the job done. Okay, so we've successfully drained our tank, and then we've rinsed it out thoroughly. So now we need to reset the equipment back to the normal distillation recycling mode. So the first step is to turn off our transfer pump, and we do that back here at the control panel. Back to the Fuji control, we hit the red button, turns it off. You can see the numbers sequence, and they go into a flash mode, and the pump is stopped turning. All right, so the next step, very important, is to change our valve settings from the draining evacuation setup that we just did to the recycling configuration. So to do that, we want to close our discharge valves here, close the ball valve, close this safety valve. Okay, this one still remains closed. You can see the yellow buttons all the way against the turning wheel face there, so it's closed. And then we open this valve, which opens up the recycling loop through the gas heater. Okay, so now we're back into the distillation recycling plumbing configuration, and that's all there is to it. To reverse the process when we're done, we simply reinstall these caps. There's a gasket, and then there's the blind, it's just a cap, and they call it a blind cap since it doesn't really open up anything. Another cap and gasket. There's a little groove in here. The gaskets slip into the groove, they drop right in. You can feel when they're well centered. These clamps just encircle the cap, and there's a wing nut style of screw to close them and open them. It's pretty simple. And then I would go get a tool and tighten these up a little tighter than I can by hand. A screwdriver, just insert it in the hole and rotate it, gives you a little extra leverage. Get them nice and snug. You want to make sure they're sealed tight. That's it.